Okay, class, let's continue with numbers 12 through 16. So for number 12, notice that we're subtracting complex numbers. So still complex numbers, we're just subtracting this sign. And if you recall, or if you look at your graphic organizer in your notes, you'll see that we found a method that helps us out when we're subtracting complex numbers. It's keep, change, flip. So what that means is we will keep the first expression, change the subtraction to addition, and then flip for the second expression just means to change the signs of those terms. So instead of a positive 35, I'll make it a negative 35. Instead of minus 10i, I'll change it to plus 10i. And that's called keep, just a quick little shortcut way to do it. Change and flip. And it works because what we're essentially doing is changing our subtraction problems into addition problems. So I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna rewrite this as 18 plus 13i, and then I'm gonna plus that and add that to negative 35 plus 10i. So again, now it's an addition problem. And how do we add complex numbers? You combine like terms. We add the real parts, we add the imaginary parts. So I'm gonna go ahead and work through this. So I've got 18 plus negative 35, that's gonna give me a negative 17. So I've done my real parts, and then 13i plus 10i, that gives me a plus 23i. And I'm done. I did it a little bit quicker than the other problems, but I think we're getting really good at adding our complex numbers, especially since it's just like terms that we're combining. Let's take a look at 13. So again, we have a complex number subtracting a complex number. So let's keep, change, flip. So if I keep the first one, I'll keep 28 minus 4i, but I'll change the subtraction to addition. And the second expression, I'll change the 10 to a negative 10 and the minus 30i to a positive or plus 30i. Change it to addition. Now I'm gonna add the real parts, add the imaginary parts. So I've got 28 plus negative 10. Well, that gives me 18. Remember the rules of adding and subtracting integers. And then for the imaginary part, I've got a negative 4i plus 30. That gives me a positive 26i. And we are finished with that. Okay, and so you can check your problem, verify your answer. Hopefully you got it right. I'm sure you did. Now, let's look at number 14, because now we're starting with the multiplication. How do I know this is multiplication? I see two complex numbers, but there's not an operation in between. So if you don't see something in between, it means you're multiplying. Now, keep in mind with our multiplication, there's a couple of steps that we have to go through. First, we use the distributive property. Then we combine any like terms. But then we have to be careful because we're going to end up with an I squared term. And that I squared is going to always turn into negative 1. So keep that in mind. That's important when you're multiplying. So I'm going to use distributive property. And you know my method. I like to just work on one term at a time to distribute. So I'm literally going to just work on the 6 and distribute 6 to each of the terms in the second expression. So 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 4i is 24i. So I'm finished with the 6 times everything in the second expression. Now I'm going to do the same for negative 4i times 6 and negative 4i times positive 4i. So this will give me negative 24i. And this negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. But look, I times I, that's my I squared. Told you we were going to have an I squared, and we know what to do with it. So let's combine like terms, because first you distribute, then you combine any like terms, then you remember that I squared is equal to negative 1, and then you simplify completely. So I have a set of like terms here. I've got a positive 24i and a minus 24i. You know what that means. They are opposites of each other, so they cancel out to 0. So these cancel each other out. That means we don't have a middle term anymore. What do we have? 36 and minus or negative 16i squared. Don't forget, the I squared has to be rewritten as -1. So I'm gonna do that here. This becomes 36 minus 16 times -1, which gives me 36. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive 16. So plus 16, and look at this. My final answer is going to be 52. Just the real number, just the whole number, 52. We don't have any more I values. All right, number 15. Again, we're multiplying because I don't see any operation in between. No addition, no subtraction sign. Distributive property, combine any like terms. Remember that I squared equals -1, simplify completely. And I'm gonna start one at a time. So I'm gonna do my 8 times 8 and my 8 times -11i. That will give me 64 minus 88i, because 8 times 11 is 88 and there's a negative. So now let me do the next one. -11 times 8 is again -88i. -11 times a -11, well, a negative times a negative is a positive, 121. Don't forget the I times I, so it's I squared. Let's see if we can combine any like terms here. So bring down my 64, and notice I've got -88i and a -88i. They're both negative, so that's one negative plus more negatives added together. So this will be a negative, see, 88 and 88 is gonna give me 6, so 176i, and bring down your 121i squared. Now what I'm gonna do is, let me go ahead, if this is okay with you guys, can I just replace this with -1 now to save a little time and space? Let's do that. So we're gonna end up with 64 minus 176i, and together, if I multiply 121 times -1, I get a -121. And I'm almost done. Because I do have some like terms still there. Remember, simplify completely. So you don't stop until there's nothing else you can do. But I see I have a 64 and a -121. So I've got to deal with those. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know I'm going to have a negative because this is more negative than positive. Let's see, 121, if I take away 21, it would be, let's see, 43 more. So that'll be a negative, let's see, 57 minus 176i. And here we're done because there's nothing else we can do. We've simplified as far as we can. Simplified completely, and we're done. And then the last one, number 16. So let's see how you did on that one. I'm gonna do my 4 times 2. I'm not even gonna draw the arrows this time. 4 times 2, 8. 4 times -5i, -20i. All right, I'm done with the 4. Now I'm gonna go to the 3i and multiply it by both of the terms. 3i times 2 is 6i. 3i times -5i is -15i squared. There's that I squared. Keeps showing up, doesn't it? All right, next step, combine any like terms. These middle terms are alike. I've got a -20i and a +6i. Bring down my 8. This gives me a -14i, because I've combined these, and bring down my negative. Can I go ahead and change this? Are you okay with that? To -1? So that I can just bring down a negative times a negative, a +15. Save some time and space. And then our final answer. I see that we can combine 8 plus 15. That gives us a 23 minus 14i. And this is our final answer. All right, so check or verify your answers. And we're gonna go ahead and do the rest of the problems.